Well, welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm very excited to launch this next upcoming season with a guest of mine and new friend of mine, Matt Chalmers, Dr. Chalmers. So, really briefly, before I get into an intro with him, first of all, welcome back to the show. Thank you for listening always. And I'm just going to remind you right out of the gate to subscribe, share, review the show on Spotify and YouTube. You know me, my mission is to reach as many people as possible, and you can help by doing that. So, thank you so much for always sharing the show. So today I have with me Matt Chalmers. He is kind of a jack. You are a jack of all trades, and so we're going to go into a lot of what he does. But primarily, Matt is a health and wellness expert and an author and a speaker who specializes in the areas of long-term wellness, nutrition, women's health, weight loss, athlete wellness, and holistic healing. One of the things that we talked about on his show, you guys can head over to his show and listen to our episode that will be probably live by the time this one is live, is, the nature of the subconscious mind and getting to the root cause of illness, which is what Matt also does with his practice. He has a client list that includes professional athletes, business executives, politicians, celebrities, and he really just takes a holistic based approach with patients to identify and treat the source of their issues, whatever they may be. Whereas we all know by now that medical doctors regularly refer patients, or I'm sorry, treat symptoms. Dr. Matt is treating the root cause, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. Matt, Dr. Chalmers, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It was awesome talking to you the other day. So yeah, it'll definitely be live. It's coming out like yesterday or today or something like that. So it'll definitely be live. It was great talking to you. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like as with most holistic practitioners, we could just go on and on and on. And that was definitely the conversation that Matt and I had on his show. So actually, why don't you just go ahead and share a little bit about your show first, and then we will go from there talking about what you do with your patients and clients.
Yeah. So my whole purpose is to get as much information out as I can on holistic health and wellness and that type of stuff. We've gotten bombarded with lies and all sorts of horrible, terrible information that is either way outdated or was never right to begin with. And so I'm trying to find as many people as I can to talk to and kind of get the information out on all of our stuff. So when I was able to talk to you about, doing this stuff with the mental work and that type of thing, I do a lot of mental work, whether it's with psychedelics or with NLP or whatever. And so, the big thing that people are missing is that a lot of our body symptoms issues, especially for our gut stuff, is derived from the mind. And so if we can't calm down that sympathetic escape, we can't fix the gut very well. And so that's where I've been kind of looking at these other alternative stuff. And so if you're not working with your emotions and your mind, you're really not going where you want to go. So it's been a really fun journey. And so the podcast kind of helped just flesh out some of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He talks about so many things too. And it's interesting that it sounds like what you're saying, you started with gut health.
Yeah. So I started with gut health. So like what we ended up coming in is we kill the parasites, kill the yeast, restore the gut, ulcerative colitis, celiac, IBS, that type of stuff. And then that helped me kind of branch into all the other stuff. So I do a lot of hormone work, I do a lot of peptide work, dementia, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Like I really love pulling people's dementia off and like watching them like kind of come back. It's super fun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of this is, go ahead.
So in a way, would you consider yourself a naturopathic doctor?
I don't know. I mean, I use a lot of stuff. I think testosterone, for example, is natural. And so some people disagree with me on that. And so if you disagree with me, then no, I guess not.
Before we even go any further, what would be the opposing argument that testosterone is natural or not?
So a lot of people think that injecting testosterone means that it's, it comes from the pharmacy, so it's a drug, so it's not natural. And it depends on what your definition is. Like when you inject cypionate into it, for a woman, like let's say a woman has hot flashes, night sweats, and vaginal dryness.
Right. That's yep.
And then you give her testosterone, it naturally converts into estrogen. And so my argument is if your body can take it and convert it into estrogen, thus solving the problems we're having with symptomatology from low estrogen, then your body recognizes it as natural enough to do all those things. I would consider it natural, and it's wildly important for the body. So like taking D3 or extra B vitamins, I view it as natural, but there are people out there who are like, no, it's not. And I'm like, I'm not going to have that argument. So if it's not to you, it's not to you. That's fine.
Yeah. Not even worth your energy at that point.
Well, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like I try to be as holistic as I can. So it's like I want to work on the whole person. And like for ulcerative colitis, like dementia and ulcerative colitis, I cannot fix unless I raise their testosterone levels up, because testosterone is the healing hormone. So if your testosterone's low, I got to bring it up to heal all the things. It's one of those things where we've been using a lot. The peptide work it just kind of goes in with it. So it's hard to get into one genre and start learning about it without learning about all the little fringy stuff that's on it.
I
So
know. And that's how you kind of go down the rabbit hole of all of these other modalities and specialties. And we'll talk about a little bit about that in the beginning. I just kind of am curious for my own curiosity as to where you started with this, what got you started. And like, obviously, both of our practices started somewhere and they expanded into this whole thing, holistic thing that we're doing, helping in all of these different areas. That's what I consider holistic, is being able to treat really mind, body, spirit, soul to heal the whole being. So where did you begin?
so the person I kind of am now, like the give me a weird body puzzle and I'll figure it out, I actually started with fibromyalgia. So I had a patient who had fibromyalgia, and she was like, nobody can figure this out. And I was like, well, I'll take a look at it. So I started going to her support groups and listening to them talk about what made them feel better and what made them feel worse. And that's when I started figuring out it's a liver issue. And so we just really fed the liver, cleaned the liver cleaned the blood, cleaned the blood and the lymph cleaned the tissues, and the pain started going away. And so that's how I started fixing that one. And then it was just like, oh, okay, well, if I can fix stuff, well, let's start reading about all the stuff. So I started waking up at 4 a.m. for 10, 12 years, and I'd read medical research for 2 hours, figuring out biochemical function, pathways, all the different things. I have a specialty in neurology and sports medicine with the chiropractic stuff. And that was really, really helpful to understand psychological function and neurologic function, specifically between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, how it relates to the gut. And as we started going through, it was just like, well, what's the physiology? And so people are always like, how can you work on brain stuff and gut stuff and hormone stuff? Like, those are all different. So I'm like, they're all body things. Like, what does your body need? And so if you just look at the physiology, like for brain, it's like, what does the brain need to work? It needs methylated folic acid, needs testosterone, needs oxygen, needs ATP. Like, it needs all these things. If you give it all back to them and take away the problems, like they're causing problems, it gets better. Like, it's not one of those rocket science things. It's like, what is the brain? It's like a plant. Like, if your leaves are wilting, maybe some fertilizer and some water. Like, maybe move it in the sun. Like, it makes a plant grow? What makes the brain healthy? Give the body those things and it'll fix it. So
It's funny. So I was on a podcast the other day and someone asked me, how do you connect people with their divinity within, right, with their spiritual selves? And the short answer to that, and I'm sure you would agree, is, well, just remove everything that's blocking it or hindering it.
yeah.
Put it in an environment to do its natural thing, because it is a natural thing for it to be connected
And so
to be in homeostasis. It wants to be there.
yeah. So yeah, I 100%. Like, what we'll do with people is I'm like, well, let's find your purpose. Like we'll walk down the road of finding the reason why you're here, because that's your spirituality. Like, the reason you're here, the path that you're here, the path that the universe or God gave you, that is why you're here. So if we can find your purpose, then we're good. Like, that's how we connect the spirituality, because it's, the deeper you go into your purpose, the better it's going to be for everybody.
And the more spiritual it feels. I mean, I don't know about you, but you and I are both living aligned with our purpose. And I can tell you that every step of the way, it feels very spiritual to me.
Yeah.
You're
No, it's
faced with these different levels and layers of yourself and opening yourself up. And you have to do it if you're going. It's this weird phenomenon that happens, that the hungrier you get, the deeper it takes you in yourself, and the more you have to connect up, and then the deeper it takes you again. And then again, it's like layers and layers and layers.
no, it's like it's the more questions I ask, the more questions I have. Because it's funny, because like, people ask me all the time, like, do you feel like you know everything about the body? And I'm like, no, I have so many more questions now than I did 5 years
Oh my
ago.
God. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but but it's fun, because like the more stuff you learn, the more things you can figure out how to fix, and the more people you can help. So it's
Yeah.
just been really, really fun to just
What
kind
would
of
happen,
figure out that
Doctor?
path.
What would happen, Matt, in a world where all of our health issues were solved? What would you do then?
I'd find something else to do. I like, if it was like, all right, fine, all this stuff's fixed, I'm like, All right, I'm good. I'll go find something else to do. Maybe I'll learn to dance. I don't know. We'll figure it
Yeah,
out. But
weird thing we're on this mission to like solve all the problems, and then it's like, but once all the problems are solved, then we like lack a sense of purpose. So then I guess we're just in heaven at that point.
I guess so. That was kind of funny because like when I did ayahuasca, when I did the DMT, that's what it felt like. Like all the problems, like they weren't gone, they were solved, they were fixed. All the problems had been solved, and it was just the most unbelievable sense of peace. And you bring up heaven, and that's kind of how it felt. Like when people describe what heaven's supposed to feel like, we're like all the problems are all solved. That's what ayahuasca felt like to me, and which is also one of the reasons people are like that psychedelic is the one that we talk to God with. And so that one was spectacular, but man, the sense of unbelievable peace was ridiculous. It was so nice.
And you just wonder though, is that possible now? Because that reality is a potentiality that is currently existing, maybe just in a different time space, but it's available for us. Can we just come to that sense of peace now, knowing that, yes, all the problems are solved, maybe not in this time space, but it will eventually be here and we'll be experiencing.
I got kind of so I'm also a gigantic nerd. So I'm a little yeah, I know, right? I'm a little like maybe it's Star Trek 5 or 4, whichever one it was, where they start asking Kirk, like, so Cybot goes in and heals everybody's pain, and Kirk is like, I need my pain. I don't know how well I would do with all the problems being solved.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
That would drive me nuts. Like, I have to give me a puzzle to fix. Like, I need to put these things together. So
because it gives
uh,
you purpose.
it does. That's where my purpose lies,
Yeah.
is solving the issues. So, luckily, it's kind of tongue in cheek. Luckily, all the health problems are not going to be solved in the next little bit. So we might get a lot more of them better. But
Yeah. Well, curiosity hits me when you say testosterone is needed for some of these ailments. And so I kind of wonder it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that we've actually gotten sicker as a society rather than healthier. And I'm sure there are so many, it's a kind of a union of many different reasons. But what do you see as being one of the leading causes of us becoming so sick that way?
stress, psychological stress. It's the number one reason that testosterone is low to begin with. If you have high stress, you have low testosterone because your body's making cortisol. Like, especially for women, you go through what's called cortisol steal. Your body takes all the nutrients you were going to use for testosterone and makes cortisol out of them. So that's why LP thing's big. That's why the hypnotic, the stuff you do is so important, is because if we can't figure out how to deal with the crazy of our lives, it will literally kill us.
Kill
And
us.
it's always funny to me because people will admit, you're like, do you think estrogen and progesterone have something to do with breast cancer and like cancer deaths? And people are like, well, of course, there's like the receptors are blah blah blah. Okay, you can't see estrogen. You can see love, joy, anger, grief. You can see these emotions on people because you don't just get them here, you get them through your entire body.
Yeah.
So the idea that a hormone that you can't see and has very, very, very low feeling function can lead to cancer, but the idea that your emotional state isn't going to lead to a different type of illness is bonkers crazy to me. Because if you understand how receptor function works, you just lit up all the receptors in your whole body. Like, when you feel love, you feel tingly in the stomach. When you feel fear, you feel it in your
Yeah.
gut and in
Yes.
your brain, and you can see it on people. Like, it's all over you. It's through and through.
And
So
you can actually see it too. I mean, at my retreats, I show an image of where emotions are felt, and there's like a pictograph of those places in your body that light up, and what colors they are: red, blue, white, orange. And so what you're saying is valid, and you actually can tangibly see it. It shows up as light, which is energy moving through your body or getting blocked or being stored in your body. Depression shows up all over, and it's blue and it's hazy. Head, heart, anger primarily in the head, the hands. You wouldn't think that, but the hands and the gut. So, I mean, you and I are doing the same thing, just at a different. We are different wheels in the same machine, and,
that's
and
that's how we find universal truth, by the way. So this is the thing that I love about it. When 7 or 8 people come from completely different angles to the same center, like this is the problem.
Right.
Let me track it back through my pathway, and we all like, oh, we have different pathways. We all got to the same point. That's how you find universal truth. So this is why it's so important, because we all know it instinctively. You ask anybody, is mental health important? It's the one thing all human beings agree on, that mental health is important, because we know deep inside it's what the root of a lot of our issues are.
Interesting that you bring up mental health. It was Mental Health Day. The time we're recording this, I think it was Mental Health Day yesterday. And I have to shoot. I'll be very vulnerable. This is my show. I can say whatever I want. But I see these like clinical or licensed therapists talking about mental health, and it's very surface level to me, right? Like it's very go shopping or take a bath, and it's like that's your form of mental health and fulfillment. And I see this system that we've designed that is not at all designed around our mental health getting better. It feels more like prison to me.
That's the thing. So, but think about what you just said. Like the mental health experts, the level that we're trying to tell people is take a bath. This is how bad we are in the country. Right. No, this is how bad we are. Like you have to tell somebody, take 10 minutes and soak. Like that's how crazy our lives have gotten.
Yeah.
Like that's decent advice. Like think of it, what that means where we're at. Like, get
But I
it,
also think that we have to redefine what an expert is.
that's for sure a thing. Because when we talk about, like, I have a different definition of healthcare provider, and medical doctors 100% can be care providers, but it's if you go to see this person to get healthier, exercise, diet, nutrition, supplementation, hormone stuff, like mental stuff, those are providing healthcare. If you have the flu and you go to get drugs, you're sick. You're getting sick care. If we can start to change the way we view things, like I'm going to work on my healthcare, I'm going to go to the gym, right? That if we can just start changing the lexicon, reframing how we're looking at things, I think it'll really kind of help a lot of people, just because once you change the lexicon, you change the person. And so that's a big fan of I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. It's like changing the direction of a big cargo ship. It's not all at once. We have to really commit to this for a long haul, and train our young ones and teach our young ones right, so that they can continue it. So yeah. So tell me about this NLP thing. I know you just came back from a workshop. It was 5 days, right? Very intensive for you. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
The level I'm at right now is just the standard practitioner level, and it's like 5 days of 8 hours a day training, and then I go back in January for the same thing again for Master Prac. But what I was able to look, so this is all based off of Carl Jung, a lot of Carl Jung's work and other psychologists, but it's talking to the unconscious or the subconscious mind. So that's the hardest part for me, because as a neurology guy, unconscious means something totally different to me. So,
Yeah.
because that's the terminology. Instead of subconscious, they use unconscious. So it took me a second, but it's amazing being able to actually get in and talk to the subconscious or the unconscious mind and change the way things happen. But the bigger thing I learned was, and the tools are great, that releasing the five negative emotions, we saw unbelievable things. There's a guy that we talked earlier about, who'd been in prison for 20 years. And in like 20 minutes, they released the five negative emotions. And this guy was like, I talked to him afterwards.
What emotions?
The five negative emotions. So, and so it's a pathway you walk through. It's a technique. And afterwards, I was talking to him. I was like, how do you feel? And he's like, 20 years of trash is just gone. He's like, I feel so much better. It was funny because it was like, because when we do this with psychedelics and we have like veterans and stuff and we break their PTSD, like oftentimes they're like, I don't know where to go now. Like my whole life was wrapped up in these emotions. Now they're gone. I don't know what to do. And so, I mean, it's always a fun journey from like, oh, all the trash is gone. Now I get to figure out how great life is. And so that was fun. It's so much fun to walk people through. But that was kind of how it was for him. But, so amazing things like that. But, it's funny. The thing that the most valuable thing for me was I learned how to communicate with my kids, because when you start learning about the different communication styles, and like my son is highly kinesthetic. And now that I know that, it's easier for me to go home. And like, now I know the words I use for him are different now, because I know what words mean more to him. And I've always been one of those guys where I always tell people this. I'm like, if I say something and you don't understand it, that was my fault, not yours. Tell me you don't understand so I can say it again. But their big thing is, the art of communication is on the response, not on what you say. Because
Yeah.
if I tell you to do something and you don't do it right, I didn't communicate the instructions properly. It's not
Yep.
that you didn't understand them. And
Yep.
so figuring out how am I supposed to talk to you so that you understand what I'm saying in your view of the universe. That was the other piece, is that everyone's universe is their own. And so they view the world and they think that's reality. They think everybody else sees things pretty much the exact same way they do,
Yep.
but none of us see it the exact same way. And so when you
Mhm.
finally get that in your head, you're like, so when I explain something to you, I've got to watch you and be like, did you understand what I said? Or do I need to
Yeah.
reframe that and put that in a different perspective? That
Remember an
was,
interesting question too, because it's like you can say, "Did you understand that?" And then they think that they do understand it based off of their perceived reality, and they say yes, and you're like, "Cool, we're on the same page." That they do what they thought they understood, and you're like, "No, that's not at all what I meant."
yep. Yeah. So like with my oldest, I'm like, so I'll talk to him now and I'm like, what did you hear me say? And he'll
Yeah.
repeat it back to me. And I'm like, good. All right, cool. So
So give me an example of like now that you know that one of your sons is a kinesthetic learner, how would you reframe your language to help him understand or to feel more connected with him?
uh, we do some breathing work. And so like I'll hold on to him, and because I would always lay down with him at night. And so I'll lay down with him now and I'll hold on to him and I'll match our breathing. And
Yeah.
getting into that matched breathing piece, like he'll fall asleep like that. Like it's super easy. But we get really peaceful and really connected, and it's awesome. And then
That's
like
so beautiful.
I've also started watching what I say, because I'm like, well, the words I'm going to use have a lot deeper impact than I thought they did. And
Yeah.
so I'm now cognizant of that. And so that's been beneficial. And I'm talking to him in a manner where I'm like, tell me how you feel. Like that's how you process the world, is through your
Yeah.
feelings. If
Yeah.
you like, tell me how you feel. He's like, well, I'm embarrassed about it. And I'm like, you don't have to be embarrassed. Like this is how I need you to tell me so I know how to communicate. And so he started telling me more stuff. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Now I understand the actions you have because of the emotions that you're obviously feeling. So I'm like, now I get it. And so like things that used to make me mad, I'm like, well, I understand that now. So it doesn't irritate me. So
Which is,
it's
by
been
the way, most females, by the way, guys out there.
or kinesthetic. Yeah. Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
lot of high kinesthetic,
I would say by majority, women tend to be more kinesthetic based on feel, sensory, these types of things. Yeah.
which is good, because typically, because you have the babies, you're the caregivers early in life, and so you need to feel like, oh, I love this and I care for
Yes.
this. So
Yes.
yeah,
There's so much of the physiology that is connected where, Gabor Mate.
I don't.
Oh, you would love him. He's a beautiful human being. He used to be a very physician, clinician, and he definitely went more spiritual and holistic, helping people heal with plant medicines too. I do believe, but he has a book talking about the Western society and how dangerous it has become with the lack of physical contact that babies get at birth and after birth, and even as he goes as far as to say that because of how popular plastic surgeries are um with the face, Botox and stuff, women have a harder time making the facial expressions that should demonstrate emotion, which is the primary way that babies are seeing and taking things in and feeling things. So that if they can't get that emotion across to the baby, they lose that communication. And it's almost like they lose confidence in their ability to be with, communicate, know when their baby is like feeling um, any which way. And it's such a crazy phenomenon. We have to be so careful with our physiology, maintaining as natural as possible, in order to maintain this intimacy.
Well, so it's funny because you mentioned that. It'd be one of those things where you're like, man, I wonder if they've ever done big studies on that. So let's look back at COVID. We covered our face when everybody was covering their
Right.
faces up, and you
Yes.
look at the massive, massive fall off of education, communication, closeness, togetherness that we saw in our kids. Massive high stress, and like the people who were like they couldn't speak very well because they're watching your mouth move, learning how to move their mouth like yours, and if you cover it, they can't see it. So
See,
like, yeah, because my kiddos were just over that age. They were like, what was this? 2020. So they were, you know, 6 and whatever, they're 6 and 9, 6 and 8 or something like that. And so now it was in, so they were okay. But the class right before them, you can start seeing the demographics and the research that's been out on this and how we lost like an entire year of progression with schooling and
Yeah.
everything else. It goes to show that just how bad that was for all of those kids.
Well, and I mean, we also forget to talk about the fact that play equals learning for kids.
Yeah.
You need to be active and get your physical body active in order to learn. We still need it as adults. That's why there's studies about doing a cold plunge right after you learn something and you retain more of the information, doing something physical along with the learning. So if we get that shut down, yeah, of course. Of course.
Well, that's one of those big things. What's really funny is that they did a neuro study of kids who had real bad ADD, ADHD, and they put them through the day just like normal. And then they took them and they had them every hour between classes. They'd have them run out and literally run and wave their arms and scream and yell, run around the playground like 3 or 4 times. It was a set number. They brought them back in, massively higher test scores, retention, things like that, because they got that kinesthetic piece. And so like that's one of those really big things. Again,
I
one of the
love
things that
these
Western
studies.
Oh, they're amazing. Like that Western society is falling down the job on is that we're not letting people move around enough. And so like we'll actually have kids in the back of the classroom standing and like playing with fidget toys and stuff like that. And they retain so much more information because again, they're kinesthetic. So if they
Yeah,
move, if they feel, that's how their brains wire things. So a lot of
yeah.
these kids who they're like, sit down, don't do this. They need to be moving, especially the boys. Like they need to be moving. Otherwise, we're damaging lots of the ability to learn and process.
Definitely. And the masculinity piece too.
Yeah.
And that is probably something we could go down the rabbit hole on. What I'm curious about is here's what I want to know. So you work in many different levels, peptides, chiropractic, physical therapy. I know those, NLP, the mindset work, also psychedelics. So you do psychedelic work. Tell me how you integrate that with your patients. And, you know, I have my philosophies on psychedelics. I think there's a proper time and a proper place, and a lot of people these days are not doing it in that way. So how do you okay, you agree? How do you dictate or determine when somebody's in an opportune place to go through that process?
Uh, so it's different for pretty much everybody. So like rapport plays a big role in it. But what we'll end up doing is like what I like to do is give people some tools to deal with the unconscious mind. And then we look at, okay, where's your addiction? Where's your PTSD? Where are your issues that we're trying to target with this? And like we've had some guys who come in and they're horrible. Like the veterans are first responders and stuff like that. And you ask them the question, you're like, so how bad your PTSD? And they're like, I know what all my guns taste like, if that means anything to you. Like I've got
Uh,
to figure out a reason every day not to kill myself. And it's like, okay, we're gonna do psychedelics with you really quick because we need a big hit to break this PTSD. The research shows it's 85% of the time you can make substantial change in these guys. And so we'll do some of that. But while we're doing that, I bring everything else up. So again, like you look at the things that are like, what's good for depression? Okay. Serotonin is great for depression, which means I'm going to give you lots of tryptophan. And so that's this amino acid we make serotonin out of. We're going to raise your testosterone levels because that's one of the major things, especially in guys, depression, anxiety, that really helps out. But again, we're restoring natural function. So if it's not something serious, like, I know what my guns taste like type of stuff, it's just like I'm a normal human being. We will go through, we'll reset the gut, we'll reset the nutrition piece, we'll go through some NLP stuff so they kind of have the tools. And then we walk into it and I go, how do you feel? And if they're like, I'm doing well. It's like, okay, do you want to try to kind of go into this and kind of see how it goes? And a lot of the people have been like, yeah, I want to go ahead and try it out. And so we'll usually start with ketamine because it's the easiest, most functional. And then once they kind of go through that, like afterwards, we do a debrief. And so depending on the person, how they learn. So like if they're auditory, I'm like, talk to yourself, record everything that you saw and how you felt and what it meant to you. Record that on a like your iPhone. And if they're visual, like make a video. If they're kinesthetic, I'm like, write it down, like draw pictures, like, but really how you felt and that type of thing. So we take whatever they saw and how they felt and that type of stuff. And then we kind of digest it and be like, what did this make you feel? How do you feel about this? Do you remember these things? We had one of the guys who had a massive PTSD issue. This wasn't one of my patients. It was one of the guys I was talking to. He was a medic in the military, and he just put a bunch of people together. They put him on a helicopter. Helicopter starts taking off. He gets hit by an RPG and killed everybody on the helicopter. And he'd repressed it. So he knew he had PTSD. He knew he had issues, but he didn't know why. And so when he went back through it, that came out. And when it came out, it was horrible for him. But when he went back through it, it knocked the PTSD out as well. And so he remembered it. And then he was like, oh my gosh, this is what messed me up. And so you kind of walk those guys back through it. Like when I did the DMT, what was funny about that was that you've got to kind of track those guys for a little bit, because when I did mine, I was like, all right, whatever. And I went home, took a shower, no big deal, came back to the office, did paperwork for the rest of the day. And then about a week later, I started getting all these like the parable of the talents wouldn't leave my head. And yeah. And that's when I realized I was like, I'm hiding my talents. And so that's when I figured it out. And then I had this sense of you can do and I tell people this, it sounds bad, but it was the most positive thing in the world. Like the way I describe it is so I like brownies. So imagine you got the best brownie in the world. I like them. I like the chewy part on the sides of the pan, and the middle's all gooey. So imagine you have the best brownie in the world. You're like, this brownie is so good. I love this brownie. And then someone comes around and just drops vanilla ice cream on top of it. And you're like, now it's so much better. I didn't know it could be better, but it's so much better. But that's kind of the way that I felt it was. It's just you can do more, things can be better. And so that's got me into that's when I started doing the bodybuilding and going back to church and doing the whole deal. It's about a year and a half, a little over a year ago. And my life is drastically better with my relationship with my wife, with my kids, with everything I've done, because I've basically got the sense of learning and my purpose of, spreading this message renewed. That was my biggest takeaway, but it wasn't one of those things where I got it when I did it. It kind of developed in me over the next couple of weeks. And so, I've talked to other guys who've done ayahuasca and they told me they kind of the same thing. They're like, I was a different person when I got done. I just didn't know it for a month. The choices I made.
It's like your trajectory drastically changes in that moment, but then you start going down that trajectory and then you realize the kind of compound effect that has with those 2 millimeter shifts.
Oh yeah. Massive. So, and so those type of things, we'll add that in as we go along, because, the thing I like about psychedelics is that if you do them properly, like you said, don't just take them for fun and be out at parties and raves and that. They can be dangerous in that environment.
Yeah.
But when you do them with the intention and you're I'm looking to better myself and grow my awareness, and I have issues. I know I have issues inside of me that I want to be able to deal with and make better, so that I can be more present for those around me, and so I can be a better human being myself. When you go in with the right mindset, it's radically different than just I'm trying to blow off steam and I want to have fun.
And I also think that having a proper guide and space is very, very important. It's not talked about enough. The space that is created by the person who's facilitating the process is extremely important, because you could go to these ceremonies and retreats with 100,000 people, or not 100,000 people, but hundreds of people, and you're not going to get that same type of transformational experience safely done with a sense of integration afterwards that you would in a one-on-one experience with somebody that you trust. And you have, like you said, you mentioned rapport, but that's another word of just saying trust. I trust you. I feel safe with you. I can opt into this and totally let go during the process, so I can let it be complete.
Well, the other problem is that you don't necessarily know where your journey is going to go, especially with psilocybin, when you're taking higher doses of psilocybin. And so having a guide there, as if you start to kind of go dark, they can be like, hey, remember the puppies? You're like, oh yeah, I remember the puppies. And so it can kind of bring you back a little bit from from the edge of, nihilism, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so having a guide there is super duper important, especially if you're trying to stay on task. If you're going to because some of these things you do, you go way inside your head and you don't talk to anybody, and that's great. There's other ones where you can use it to communicate. Like MDMA is like that. There's a couple other ones where we can have a therapy session, if you will, while you're on it, and it's wildly more beneficial, because there's stuff that you would want to come out but you just like you ask the question, you're like, I don't know. You do know. Your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind does know. You're just
Yes.
blocking it with your conscious mind.
Conscious
So
mind.
we open up the unconscious mind, we start asking questions, you start giving answers, and you're like, I guess I was a problem for me. I guess I did have an issue with my mom
Yeah.
for 20 years that everybody told me I did, but I didn't think I did.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why. So it's funny. We've of course exchanged the terms unconscious and subconscious. For whatever reason, I prefer subconscious because to me, there is an intelligence in the subconscious mind. It's not completely random or unconscious, or yes, we do things without us being consciously aware. So we are a little bit unconscious of it. But the subconscious to me, that picture shows me that it's so it's under the conscious mind. And I like to always use this analogy of your mind being like a body of water, namely an ocean. And so if the conscious mind is kind of like a boat sitting on top of the waves, it's a very small portion, first of all. And also, that boat goes at whatever has happening with the waves. It's kind of just at the mercy of the waves of the water. What's creating the waves? Everything underneath. And that's the subconscious mind. So it's happening underneath. First of all, you don't know it, you just feel it. You're like, holy shit, something's happening. I'm like being rocked right now. But unless I dive under or I'm able to go under, submit myself, be in submersion in the subconscious mind that I don't know. And that's why, I've gotten to a point, Matt, where when people ask me, like, well, could it be for myself, calling me out on some of my own BS? And they say, well, could it be this? I always say, I don't know. I'd have to dive into that. I would have to really get with myself and do some self-hypnosis or, some meditation and some work on myself to see what's underneath my subconscious mind. Because I know enough now not to be arrogant or ignorant to say, no, no, I'm not angry about that anymore. I'm over that. You just never know.
Well, so my favorite thing to do now is I figured this out like a month before I went to the NLP. And so because it was funny because I asked Nathan, the guy, he's a buddy of mine, and he was teaching the class. And he was like, we're going to release anger. And I was like, all right. And he was like, what? And I go, man, I don't think anger is a real emotion. And he was like, why? And I was like, because I figured out that like whenever I was mad, I wasn't mad. I was something else.
Yeah.
Like I was hurt or I was lonely
Yep.
or I feel like I was failing, and that the anger was just like a secondary reaction. He was like, that's actually how it is. And so now whenever I get mad about something, I'm like, all right, what's really going on? Like,
What am
you're
I
not
hurt
mad.
about?
What are you hurt about? What are you sad about? Like, what's actually going on? And that's been really helpful for me because like the other day, uh, it's kind of a weird deal, but my son got hurt playing football, and like I was like, it was because I came up with a treatment plan, and then it felt like my son and my wife kind of rejected it, and so it made me mad. And I'm like, you're not mad. What's going on? And then I was like, well, I'm upset that they didn't trust me with my plan. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, did you explain it really well, or did you just assume that they would just do what you said because you said it? And I was like, yeah, I don't think I communicated that plan as well as I should have. And so
Mhm.
now all of a sudden, like the anger is completely gone. I've figured out what the actual problem was. I was sad about it,
And
and
you
how to resolve that. Yeah, and how to resolve that problem in
yeah.
the future. And so, like, because I know that anger is not real, it was so much easier for me to be like, when you feel anger, you've got to immediately start diving deeper and figure out what exactly your problem is. Because
Well,
if
that's
you
yeah.
don't,
I mean that's beautiful because that's a lot of what I do with IFS, like parts work with people. Is you go directly to, and we don't even call it like a feeling. We say it's a part of you that is feeling. It's you're not your whole being is not feeling that. There's just a part of you that's feeling, and we want to know why. And also, is this related to something else? Maybe because that would probably knowing myself, I feel like that would ignite the same reaction, being like, well, what's wrong with mine? Like, why'd you reject my solution? Like, do you not trust me? Do you think I'm fraud? Of course, it's going to lead you back to potentially a moment way back when maybe even the root. What might we say the root cause of this emotion, and we can actually have the opportunity then to heal that and come along and partner. And then, like you said, once you have an action plan or a potential solution, boom, all the negative emotions are gone. You have
yeah,
forward positive movement again.
yeah. And it's so nice now that I kind of like I've been able to formulate this whole thing for me. And I work with it with people as well. but it's one of those things where it's really, really nice to kind of figure out, when you feel this, do this thing. Like walk down like ask yourself these questions. And once you
But it's
get,
so hard though, because so here's what I find, like people people get intoxicated by their emotions, Matt, and they know it. So in my calm state, cool, got it. I'm in control of this. Next time I get angry, I'm doing this. And then I get angry and I'm like, like all the reactions take place. It's like you have to have this moment of dedication and commitment to say, even though my instinct is to do this in the face of anger, and that is totally what my neural pathways are like. I have patterns, right? I literally have the ingrained neural pathways that do that. I have to be a little bit, just a little bit conscious during that time to say, that's right, that's right. I'm creating new neural pathways. I'm not breaking any old ones, by the way, because our subconscious mind doesn't like to hear that. It doesn't want to hear like I'm breaking something. Nobody likes to break anything. So I'm creating new ones. And then you have to be a little bit more conscious during that time to almost, I don't know, discipline yourself to do it. You know what I'm saying? What do you think that is? I mean, what do you think sets people like you and I apart from being committed to doing that and being able to put it into action, and those people that know what to do but just can't seem to do it?
I think one of the things that helped me is that I'm very AD, so I'm very in my own head. I spend a lot of time processing and thinking about stuff, so that's a
Yeah.
definite benefit and a terrible, terrible curse. Because
Yeah.
when I get something stuck in my head, I'm like it might take me 2 weeks. Oh yeah, obsessed. 2 weeks to break through, but I finally will. But it's always there, which is also good when you're trying to figure out how to fix something. And you're just like, I'm gonna research for 40 hours until I figure, because I have to find
Yeah.
this. But that I think the big issue is that one, I don't think people have the tools. This is why I like the NLP and the stuff that you do. Like let me teach you how to do this.
Yeah.
Like if no one teaches, like it's like if you walk into a really fancy gym and no one's taught you how to use the equipment, there's a chance you're going to use it wrong.
Yeah.
So have someone walk you through this stuff. And so
Yeah.
like your mind is so powerful. The other hard thing is you got to be honest with yourself, right? That's probably the hardest
There
piece.
it is.
You got to
There.
be like,
The
as
truth.
you're going through it, you got to be like, I feel like this. And you're like, no, I don't. Like, yeah, you're sad. Like, who are you lying to? Like,
Well,
I
yeah.
know you're sad.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but there's a lot of times when we really have to take accountability. And the truth is hard. The truth is really hard sometimes. By the way, I think I just figured out what you and I have so similar. This obsessive problem solving thing in
Yeah.
our brain. The figure it out gene. I want to know now. I want to know, and my audience wants to know too, Matt. Okay, so don't let him down. When you were growing up, are you the youngest?
Yeah.
Me too. Okay. Were you the wise one, trying to figure everything out for everyone and keep it together?
Yeah. I think that
Well,
I was trying to figure stuff out as I was going up. Man, it's so it's weird to look back, and this is again, I got to deal with this one, but like when I look back at who I was 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's almost embarrassing to me, which is I think good on one side because
totally get it.
there's been so much growth, and I'm so happy and proud of my growth. But it's like, man, like who was that guy?
Unrecognizable.
Yeah, but I think that there was a lot of trying to figure stuff out, but man, there was so much more just ego and trash that I had to deal with, like back when I started thinking about how I was back then. But yeah, there was a lot of I want to figure this out, but I think the
Little
commitment and the
rebel.
dedication. Yeah. Oh, there's always been a giant rebel in me.
Yeah,
So
me
yeah,
too.
yeah.
We're the same person, male and
Yeah.
female.
Well, what's funny is so my oldest son is like my clone, which is horrible
Oh
for so
no.
many reasons. Yeah. They're like my son, like we all have one of these, right? So my son will say something to me and I'm like, I need to go apologize to my parents. Like, I just feel like I should call them and be like, Zane just said something to me that reminds me of the stuff I used to say to you. And I'd like to apologize for 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
But no, it's really fun because like you'll see that stuff. And that's really a fun piece to kind of see like, okay, now that I see this inquisitiveness or this rebel, like he would argue really hard with all like back to the mask thing. He would argue like these don't do any good. He's like, prove to me these work. He was like, how could this possibly
Wow.
work? He's like, see these gaps? And I'm like, man, I
Smart.
can't, because like I would try really hard not to lie to my kids. And so I was just like, you know what? This is one of those things you're just going to have to learn to deal with, because there's lots of crap we got to learn to deal with. And he's like, I don't want to learn to deal with stuff. And I'm like,
Oh, I like it.
again, he's awesome. I'm like, again, you're right, but you do have to go to school. And so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And so those are like, parenting yourself is oftentimes one of the hardest things to do. Yeah. But luckily now I know how to talk to him a little better. And so the parenting has become a little easier. So it's been more fun.
Wow. Again, every time I talk to you, it's like we just go down these riffs and side trails that could go on forever. But I really cherish you. I really am happy that you're here. I'm happy that we connected because it seems like we're doing really a very similar work from a very similar standpoint, actually. I might be even more rebellious than you and your son, though. I refuse to comply. I'll be like, no, I don't have to follow anything that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to. But Matt, tell us, just thank you so much for your presence. And for my listeners who want to know or hear more, because I know you have a TEDx talk out there, so go check that out, guys. Please tell my listeners where they can find all of you.
So all the social I'm on is Dr. Chalmers one. Follow me on X or Twitter, because I've already been banned on TikTok and I've been threatened to be kicked off YouTube. And then social was great for me until 2020, and I
Yeah.
figured out how to treat COVID and I posted about it, and my social's been kind of bad ever since.
Yeah.
Shocker. So yeah, so X is that, if we're going to talk about stuff, I want to make sure that we can get, the important information out. And so the censorship on X seems to be a lot better. So follow
Great.
me there, Dr. Chalmers one,
Well, I didn't even know that. I'll go follow you on X right now. And then your website?
pillarsofwellness.com. And so, yeah,
Nice.
pillarsofwellness.com. And so that's the same. That's my title of my book. And then the TEDx talk, it's hard to find because it's on cannabis. So if you'll Google Dr. Chalmers cannabis TED talk, you can find it. Which is funny because that's how I got into psychedelics. Because after I did the TED talk on cannabis, replacing opioids with cannabis, a buddy of mine was like, well, you figured out this pain thing. If you can just figure out the addiction part, he's like, you've got this whole opioid problem solved. And so, of course, you put that in you open that loop in my subconscious. And I'm like, no, I got to go do this now, which it didn't take me very long because I didn't have to figure it out. We've known how to fix addiction for 60 years.
Yeah.
And so that's where it drew me to the psychedelics, because, and you start looking at that. I talked to a guy who told me he was so addicted to cocaine that he was crying about his addiction to cocaine while doing cocaine. And then 3 weeks later, the addiction was completely gone. And it's been 2 years. He's like, I've never touched it since. And that was the thing.
Which brings me to a question I was going to ask earlier, and I'll just ask it now as we're wrapping up. For me, I feel like we know the root of all ailments, addictions, neuroses, physical, and it always comes back to something mental, emotional, which in it is
Absolutely.
spiritual for me.
And I think it's very difficult.
I was like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that there's every single thing that you look at, like the psychosomatic function, like every single thing you look at, there's a giant emotional, psychological component to it.
Yeah.
And if you can clear those things and get your psychological and your emotional component to really kind of integrate together, that is where the spirituality lies.
Yeah.
That's where the peace, that's where the love, that's where the joy, that's where that lies.
Yeah.
And so I think that I don't know if you can separate the mental, emotional from the spiritual, because
Yeah.
now we can do it nowadays because we're so separated as a society. We don't understand the spiritual because we're so pushed over here.
Yeah.
So, but I think
even though we
you're
can
exactly
shut
right.
it out, we can't separate it. Just because
Correct.
we deny it or shut it out doesn't mean we can separate it. We are a 4-dimensional human being, and we forget about that. We just think that we're 2D. I'm a mind and I'm a body. But you're also a soul and a spirit. Your soul contains your psyche, and your spirit is your spirituality. And you can't deny that. That is our existence.
Well, the other fun thing is when you really get down into some of the young stuff and the psychedelic stuff, you get down into the universal or the collective unconscious or the collective subconscious,
Yes, the group soul.
where we're the group soul, where we're all connected. And that is when you start recognizing that and understanding that, and you can actually muscle test that, you can quantum test that, and it is a thing. That's where stuff gets really, really, really cool. Because what you start to understand is if we can change the energy of enough people, we will
Yes.
literally change the energy of the world because we're all
Yes.
connected.
Yep.
And so if we can get this, if we can start rolling this,
It's see, here's the thing, right? The other side knows that. Why do you think there are so many messages of fear and hatred and anger and all of these things? Get enough people riding that frequency of emotion, and there you have the whole world in that state. And then you basically have control over the whole world. And so the counterforce to that is, like we've been talking, love and presence and spiritual purpose and doing all these things, and you get enough counteractive force. Here's my philosophy, right? Evil, darkness is not a power. It's a force. It's an influence, and it needs to be big and it needs to be loud in order to be effective. Love, the presence of God in us and God around us, doesn't need to do anything but be present because it is the only power. And so when enough of us get in tune with that, in that awareness and in that presence, well, we are the power that counteracts all of that force.
well, so I 100% agree with you because my favorite definition of dark is absence of light.
Yeah.
And so if we just, all we have to do is add a little bit of light in and it destroys the darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's both yours and my mission. And I just encourage people to go follow you on all those channels. Go check out your website. And if you want to know more and in any capacity with Matt. And thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you too. Well, thanks guys for listening. As always, please like again, please rate the show, review it, subscribe so you're notified about new episodes. And until next time, we will talk to you very soon. Keep igniting your spark within.